What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the channel for the very first post-trade deadline Ask Me Anything episode of the season. As always, huge shout out to each and every one of you who sent in a question. Even if your question isn't featured in this episode, just know I read every single one and I appreciate all of you guys. Before we get started, I also want to give another huge shout out to HelloFresh for sponsoring this video. Why not start the year off right with HelloFresh, your go-to for cozy homemade meals that are quick, easy, and budget friendly. With fresh, seasonal ingredients delivered to your door, you can enjoy delicious, comforting dishes without the hassle or high cost of dining out. Their expanded winter menu includes a variety of snacks, sides, and extras that pair perfectly with your weekly meals. HelloFresh was nice enough to send me a box, and I had a fantastic experience. Listen, I'm a 23-year-old dude. Most of the meals I usually cook are very straightforward, so I don't claim to be some 5-star chef by any means, but I had absolutely no issues putting any of these meals together thanks to the simple ingredients and very straightforward and easy to follow instructions. My favorite meal had to be the chicken chow mein. Even my dog Piper was impressed with the final product. Yes, I did give her a bite. Unfortunately, she could not tell me if she liked it, so you're just going to have to take my word for it. It was delicious. On top of being super convenient, HelloFresh is going to help you cut back on food waste significantly. Canadians waste $1,700 a year on food waste per household. By only sending you the ingredients you need, HelloFresh helps you reduce food waste by 36%. Get up to 20 meals for free, plus free sides for life and free shipping on your first order at hellofresh.ca with the code ONYQUIST. Offers for new and returning subscribers who have been canceled for more than 270 days. That's 20 free meals plus free sides for life at hellofresh.ca with code ONYQUIST. Do yourself a favor and check out HelloFresh by scanning the QR code on the screen or visiting the link at the top of the description and in the pinned comment. Starting off this episode with a question from Ben, who says, does Marchand re-sign with Boston in the offseason? I definitely wouldn't count out the possibility of this happening. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Brad Marchand wants to finish his career as a Boston Bruin. That being said, though, the whole reason Marchand was traded is because they couldn't come to an agreement on an extension. John Bucci-Gross reported that Boston offered Brad Marchand a 2-year deal with a cap of $3 million per season. Marchand declined that. He wanted a 3-year deal. Boston then went and offered him a 3-year deal, but the AAV wasn't what Marchand was looking for. So if the Bruins are going to look to bring Brad Marchand back in free agency, they're likely going to have to improve upon the offer that they put together for him before trading him to the Panthers. Because if Boston isn't going to be willing to give Brad Marchand the type of contract that he wants, I'd imagine there's going to be a handful of other teams that would. The next question we have comes from Jake, who says, how much longer does Yzerman have if the Wings miss the playoffs? Wallman is a tough look on him, and personally, I feel he hasn't given me much faith over the next 3 to 5 years. Even if the Red Wings miss the playoffs this season, and I'll even go as far as saying if they miss the playoffs again next season, I don't think Yzerman's job is in jeopardy. I think he has a very long leash, and even though I've been critical about some of the moves Yzerman has made, I still think he has earned the right to have a long leash. I feel like sometimes people forget just how bad the Red Wings were when Steve Yzerman took over as GM. We all knew this was going to be a very long rebuild. As a whole, I still feel like Yzerman has done a pretty good job. For the most part, he's drafted really well with guys like Seider, Raymond, Edvinsson, and Marco Kasper. He's been able to put together a team that is competitive enough to compete for a wildcard spot, and they still have one of the better prospect pools in the NHL. He's definitely made some poor free agency decisions, signing guys like Andrew Kopp, Ben Sherratt, Justin Hall, and Vladimir Tarasenko. I would say that's definitely the biggest knock on his tenure as Red Wings GM so far. Like you said, the whole Jake Wallman thing isn't a great look. Really, the only way I can make sense of his decision to send him to San Jose along with a second-round draft pick for future considerations is by telling myself there has to be more to the story. There had to be something that happened behind the scenes that led to Jake Wallman falling out of favor within the Red Wings organization. Again, as a whole, I still feel like the Red Wings are in a pretty decent spot, especially considering how bad the team was when Steve Yzerman inherited it. Moving on to the next question, this one comes from Mitchell, who says, do you think that asking Marner to waive his no movement clause to go to Carolina was a bad move by the Leafs? Seems unlikely he'll sign for any sort of hometown discount if he thinks they're looking to move him. I mean, I don't think he was going to sign for any kind of hometown discount anyway. As far as was asking him to waive his no move clause a bad decision, I'm not going to say that. I mean, you're not doing your job as a general manager if you're not exploring every possible option to make your team better. At the end of the day, the NHL is a business, and Mitch Marner had to have known that there was a possibility the Leafs could look to move him, especially considering the fact that he's a pending UFA. At the same time, he had every right to invoke his no move clause, and he did. He decided not to waive it, which isn't a surprise to me. Him and the Maple Leafs are having a great season. Toronto is fighting for that 1 seed in the Atlantic Division. Mitch Marner leads the team with 79 points in 62 games. Deep down, I really do believe Mitch Marner wants to remain a Maple Leaf. I don't really think them asking to waive his no move clause is going to affect whether he stays or leaves in free agency. In all likelihood, I just think Mitch Marner is going to end up taking the best offer he gets, whether it's from the Maple Leafs or somebody else. This next question comes from Hatrick Kane, who says, based on how stacked the Central and Atlantic divisions are, do you think it's finally time to change the playoff format? I wish they would. I really like the 1 through 8 seeding much better, where the 1 seed goes against the 8 seed, 2 versus 7, and so on. Now, I will say this current format does make for very exciting first round matchups. I mean, it's pretty crazy. We could see Dallas versus Colorado in the first round this year. Dallas, who is currently the 2nd seed in the Western Conference, and Colorado, who is currently the 5th seed. But still, me personally, I think the 1 versus 8 format makes a lot more sense. I can't see the NHL going back to it, though. Moving on now to the next question. This one comes from Master Your Money, who says, what do you see Pittsburgh doing? Pittsburgh has an aging core that just doesn't seem to have it anymore. Maybe taking the route Boston did with Marchand and trade away core players as their contracts are expiring or close to expiring? Or do you think players like Crosby and Malkin will retire as Penguins? I think Crosby will for sure. He knew the Penguins weren't going to be Stanley Cup contenders at any point in the near future, and yet he still signed that 2-year extension. It's not like he's never won a cup before and he's trying to chase a ring before he retires. Sidney Crosby has won pretty much everything there is to win. And when it comes to Malkin, he's still signed through next season. He's already 38 years old. I'd imagine he retires at the end of his current contract. If I had to guess, I think he retires as a Penguin too. Same thing I said about Crosby. It's not like he's trying to chase a Stanley Cup. He's won 3 of them. And even if Pittsburgh did want to completely blow things up and trade a guy like Malkin, the ball is completely in his court. He has a no move clause, and so does Sidney Crosby. So if they don't want to go anywhere, then they're not going anywhere. At the end of the day, I think Pittsburgh is going to look to do right by these guys. If they do want to be traded and they want another chance to compete for a Stanley Cup, I'm sure the Penguins would honor that, but I'm also sure the Penguins would have no problem hanging on to both of these guys and letting them retire as Penguins. The next question we have comes from Golf Legends, who says, what player were you most surprised about getting traded, and what player were you most surprised didn't get traded? The player that did get traded that surprised me the most was definitely Brad Marchand. Everything about it was surprising. The fact that it was one of those buzzer beater trades that came in right before the deadline, and the fact that they traded him to one of their biggest rivals in the Florida Panthers. And for the player that didn't get traded that surprised me the most, I'm definitely going with Ryan Donato. I didn't think Chicago would keep him around beyond the deadline without an extension, but they did, which definitely came as a bit of a surprise to me. Ryan Donato is still a pending UFA. I'm sure the Blackhawks would love to keep him around beyond this season, but the decision not to trade him at the deadline this year could definitely come back to bite them if he ends up leaving in free agency. Moving on now to the next question. This one comes from Hugh Barkhurst, who says, which team that was inactive at the deadline were you most surprised by? Example, teams like Vegas, New Jersey, and St. Louis. I would probably say Vegas. I mean, they did go out and bring back Riley Smith, but still, it was definitely one of the quieter deadlines that they've had in franchise history, especially compared to last year where they went out and made 2 big trades, bringing in Noah Hannafin and Thomas Hertl. Maybe it shouldn't be a huge surprise that they were inactive for the most part because of their cap situation. No LTIR shenanigans this year, although William Karlsson is currently on LTIR, but he's expected back well before the playoffs. Even with their cap situation, though, I still thought in the back of my mind we would see them pull off some kind of crazy move like trading for Rantanen or Marchand. As far as New Jersey goes, I'm not surprised that they had a quiet deadline for the most part, with Jack Hughes being out until next season. I don't think it made sense for them to load up right now, because no matter who they traded for, it's still going to be very difficult for them to go deep in the playoffs this year without Hughes. The next question we have comes from Mo Bamba, who says, why do you think Greer would trade Zetterlund? It makes no sense to me. This was a head scratcher to me as well, especially considering the return that the Sharks got. I figured if they were going to trade away a player like Fabian Zetterlund, it would be because they just got an offer they couldn't refuse. I thought what they got for him, which was a second-round pick, Noah Gregor, and Zach Ostapchuk, was very underwhelming, especially considering how crazy the market was. Maybe Mike Grier thought that Fabian Zetterlund was going to be asking for too much on his next deal. He is an RFA at the end of the season. He scored 24 goals last season. He's likely going to hit the 20-goal mark again this season. But even still, it's not like San Jose is short on cap space. I really didn't love this move for them, especially considering the fact that Zetterlund is one of William Eklund's best friends, who is one of San Jose's young stars. He took the news of the trade pretty hard. He declined to speak to the media after the deadline. Overall, just a really questionable decision by the San Jose Sharks. This next question comes from All Hail Kale, who says, if you were the Canes, would you rather have the Stars deal for Stankoven and 2 firsts, or the least reported offer of Cowan, Minton, and 2 firsts? I would definitely rather have the package that Carolina ended up getting, Logan Stankoven and 2 firsts. I'm not quite as high on Fraser Minton as some other people are. I do think Cowan's probably going to be very good. But when it comes to Logan Stankoven, he is already a very effective NHL player at just 22 years old, whereas neither Fraser Minton or Easton Cowan are full-time NHLers yet. Carolina is a team that is still trying to compete for a Stanley Cup, so I don't think it would have made any sense for them to take a package in return for Rantanen that was only comprised of future assets. When it comes to Stankoven, he's a player that's going to be able to help them down the stretch this season and in the playoffs, but also be a big piece for them long term. So for a team in their position, I think the package of Stankoven and 2 firsts made a lot more sense for them than Cowan, Minton, and 2 firsts. Next up, this question comes from LV Lorenz, who says, how do you think Avs fans will react when Rantanen returns to Ball Arena on the 16th, now that he chose to go to one of their biggest rivals and took around the same price they offered? I'm not expecting him to get booed. I don't think he should get booed. This is still a player that helped Colorado win a Stanley Cup. And at the end of the day, Colorado still got very good value back for Mikko Rantanen. I'm sure Avs fans are very happy with how Martin Necas has played in Colorado so far. I definitely think Avs fans would have been a lot more upset if Rantanen left in free agency and left Colorado empty-handed. And when it comes to him signing a deal with Dallas that was around the same as what Colorado offered him, you have to remember that there's no state income tax in Texas. So Mikko Rantanen's going to take home more money from this contract than if he would have signed the same deal with Colorado. And now finally, finishing up this episode of the Ask Me Anything series with the last question from Scrubby Joe, who says, will ASP make the opening night roster? I saw that he just broke the SHL junior goal record. I hope he does, but we know the Red Wings like to be really patient with their prospects, so I wouldn't be surprised if he starts out with Grand Rapids. Give him some time down there to get used to playing on a North American ice surface. But I'm going to make a prediction and say if Axel Sandin Pellikka starts next season in the AHL, he's not going to finish the season in the AHL. I think he would earn himself a call-up before the end of the season. So that is going to wrap up this episode of the Ask Me Anything series. Like I said at the beginning of the video, huge shout out and thank you to each and every one of you who sent in a question, as well as huge thanks to HelloFresh for sponsoring this video. If you made it all this way to the end of the video and you ended up enjoying yourself, please remember to leave a like. It's the best way to let me know that you enjoyed, and it does help out the videos a ton. And most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this all year round, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I will talk to you all again soon.